to Decoding Dragons, where we break down all things House the Dragon. We're your hosts, Liza and Michelle, spilling the royalty and breaking down the fire for every episode.
Yes, ma'am. So today we're going to be talking about what happened in House of the Dragon Season 1, Episode 3, Second of His Name was the name of the title. What did you think of this episode?
So first off, I was so wrong. I was so wrong. We did not get a wedding. We did not get, Alicent in her green dress. So I have a theory about that later. I was wrong. So basically, I don't watch the trailer, like the next episode trailers when they come out, because I'm trying to remember all that I can about the story, like on my own a little bit, and kind of go into each episode with as little spoilers as possible. So we got all the Stepstone action in this episode, and it was so cool. I felt so bad for the guy that Caraxi stepped on. That was sad. That was so sad. But we got all the Stepstones action. We got to see Kragus, the crab feeder, and got to see him be a villain and be all creepy in the caves and everything, and come out to Daemon waving the white flag. And we got to see Seasmoke. What did you think?
Okay, talk about Seasmoke. I didn't realize there was going to be another dragon. Coming out of the Stepstones, I am programmed to think that it's going to be a female riding a dragon to save the day because of the original Game of Thrones series. So when it first came on, I was like, yeah, Rhaenyra is coming to save the day. And then it was not at all Rhaenyra or Syrax. But the episode in general, so good. I know I said this last week, but again, it was a Game of Thrones episode the way we know Game of Thrones. There was a lot of political dialogue. There's a lot of crazy, gruesome battle scenes. Let me just say one thing real quick. Daemon is a crazy son of a bitch.
He went out there solo. I couldn't tell either. By the end of it, I was like, did Corlys and Daemon have a plan? Or was
Right.
this a last ditch suicide mission effort where he's like, I'm not going back. I'm losing, or I'm winning, or I'm dying. So
No, he's just a nutsack. He just decided to hate on his brother and say, no, and literally kill the messenger, and then just go out on his own and fake that white flag was fucking crazy. And then the actual battle scene itself was so good.
it was a good plan, and I'm assuming that he and Corlys had it worked out at some point. Like, okay, eventually I'm gonna need some backup. They're gonna come out of the caves. I'm gonna need some backup, but I'm going in alone first. And I kept looking for Caraxes, but I'm guessing that would have been way too obvious, because the crab eater kept looking up like, I know you're not out here alone. I know you ain't come all this way without your dragon. Where is your dragon?
Well, right. That was so brilliant by the writers because he is obviously pointing us towards the sky and he's like, I know there's going to be a dragon come out. And so we were all expecting Craxes to come save his rider, right? And then it was just like, nope, not going to happen. We're like, oh my God. Edge of our seats the entire time.
And okay, so also fun fact, I don't know how many out there know this. If you read the books, Targaryens being fireproof, from what I've heard, is actually only show canon. So it's not book canon. So I thought that was when Seasmoke lit the ring of fire around Daemon and blew Daemon backwards with the heat. I was like, oh God. So I don't know how they're gonna handle, if they're gonna keep the show canon in House of the Dragon, or if they're gonna slowly change it to them not being fireproof. So when Seasmoke lit the ring of fire, I was like, you better be glad you were out of the way of that.
Right. Well, and if you remember in episode 1 with Viserys, next to Balerion the Black Dreadskull, he was putting his hand over the candles. And he was fireproof.
Yeah, I'm assuming they're gonna keep it, because it'd be kind of weird to change it now. Like, how did Daenerys walk
Right.
out of the fire and was like, "I am here,
Correct.
follow me." So it would be very interesting to kind of see how they're handling that. But it was an amazing episode, and I like how they're handling the pacing. Like, I like how they're sandwiching the action and the story. So you get action at the beginning, and you get to see Caraxes being totally badass and very scary. That is a scary dragon. I know I say this every episode.
No, but he is. The way his body moves is so different, and what we've mentioned before with him, you said he's called the Bloodworm, I think, with Wyrm. But they totally get that snaky, wormy feel with the body, with the neck, with everything.
I know, and it just unnerves me every time I see it. So you get all that at the beginning, and then the stag hunt and Aegon's birthday in the middle. The symbolism there was so good. the character building for Viserys and Rhaenyra was so on point. And then at the end, you get the war for the Stepstones and Corlys kicking ass with his battle axe, and Daemon basically becoming king of the Narrow Sea. And I was just like, this is how you pace an episode, people.
Yeah. Yo, Corlys is a badass.
And everybody got to meet Vaemon. So in the book, he's Corlys's nephew, but in the show, it looks like he's going to be the younger brother. So he's actually going to be an important character moving on also. And it was just so cool to see the war table because we actually got to see so much of that in like the teaser images that were leaked early in production. So we got to see the war table, and you've got Rhaenyra and Vaemon and Corlys all there, and everybody's like, "Why are we still out here? This is basically a losing battle." And then Daemon walks up, he sees all the energy, and my friends who were watching it with me were like, "Yeah, he definitely saw the mutiny coming and had to do something about it." And I was like, "He definitely did something about it." He's like, "Fine, we're gonna win, and we're gonna win fast, and that way nobody has to keep talking about it."
So when he walked up to the war table and everybody was like, "Hey, let's do a mutiny," basically, except for Corlys, he's like, "No, you're not doing a mutiny." I thought that when Daemon got Viserys' scroll, that it was going to be like he's going to turn around and be Daemon and be like, "Yay, my brother's here to help," and he's going to send aid. But instead, he fucking got pissed, beat the shit out of the messenger, and then went on a suicide mission.
Yeah, so I don't know much about naval warfare, but I know for a fact I saw 3 ships go by, and at least one of them got like crushed with their ground with their land to ship fire. And when Viserys said he was only sending 10, I was like, how long have they been fighting? Don't they need more than 10 maybe? Like I got a little insulted. I was like, just 10, but okay. But that was like it was just enough to say he did something, but not enough to lose resources. And so I kind of got where Dan was coming from. Obviously, I know nothing about medieval naval warfare, but it was still I still felt I felt a little insulted on his behalf.
I agree. I agree with that. I do want to say also, Vaemon Valerion is like the coolest name I've ever heard in my life.
Daemon Valerian, right? No, I think all the Valerians have super cool names. Like you've got Lena and Laenor and Vaemon and Corlys.
Corlys, yeah.
And there are some other Valerians in the books, and we're going to meet some others later in the story too. So they are just like such a cool house. So we are going to get into our blood section, and we all know there was a ton of blood in this episode. So we are going to dive into it and break down the different symbolism and character dynamics right now. All right, so it was kind of all of these episodes have basically been the same energy as the earlier seasons of Game of Thrones, right? So we get so much politics, so much dialogue, so much character interaction and nuance. So, what are your thoughts on the dialogue and the politicking in this episode?
Yeah, good question. So, I agree with you that they're very similar to the earlier seasons of Game of Thrones. There's a lot of character developments, really character driven. So one thing I really appreciated was I did watch the 6-minute like behind the episode. It happens right after the episode comes on. And some of the writers were in there discussing, episodes 1, 2, and 3 were about the character development, like I was just mentioning. And what I kind of appreciated is, we are in it. We're episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. This is great. But what it kind of seemed from them was that they were trying to just get through episode 1, 2, and 3 to set the stage for the rest of the show, like the rest of the series. So we had to get through all these time jumps. We had to plant the seeds of what's actually happening. And so now at the end of this episode, we have Rhaenyra set up as Rhaenyra. We have Viserys set in his decision making and as Viserys, and then we have Daemon's crazy ass as like the Daemon that we're gonna know from here on out. So all the characters are set after these 3 episodes. And so to answer the question about what I thought about this episode's dialogue and politicking, phenomenal. I mean, last episode was a lot more talking. It was a little less action. This one had, like you said, sandwiched action, politicking, action. The symbolism in the hunt was really cool for me because I love the Game of Thrones original series. And so, like, obviously, season 1 of Game of Thrones with Robert Baratheon and his hunt and everything like that, there was a lot of similarities, but you could also see the timing difference. Like, this is more of a festival. It was more of a celebration rather than just like the king and a few of his high council members that went out and the cupbearer basically went out into the woods.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree because first of all, the last time we saw a hunt with a boar that happened on screen. It went very badly. So when Kristen Cole and Rhaenyra had to face off against the boar in this one, I was afraid. I was like, I know that y'all are both main characters, but Game of Thrones is not above killing book characters early, and it's not above letting characters that die in the books live longer than they do in the story. So I was a little nervous. I was like, I have no idea what's going to happen right now. But I for one definitely enjoyed the symbolism between the two different stags they were hunting. So what did you get from that? Like, what were your thoughts on the two separate stags and what was going on there?
Yeah, so I found it really interesting that the white stag was such a big aspect. You know, that's kind of like the King Arthur type of stories. That there's a lot of symbolism in the white stag, and I really appreciated that the stag that Viserys ended up killing was not the white stag, but Rhaenyra is the one that saw it, and so the stag that Viserys did kill. One thing that they mentioned in the after the episode was that it kind of set Viserys' decision because the white stag, you know, Otto Hightower is all on his high horse and saying, well, the kings are making their favor towards your son to be the heir to the Iron Throne instead of Rhaenyra. And so Viserys now has this seed of doubt in his mind that he made the wrong decision. And I feel like if he would have seen the white stag and killed the white stag, then it would have solidified that, hey, Aegon needs to be the heir, not Rhaenyra. But instead, Rhaenyra was able to see it, and it set her it made her more confident. It made her more comfortable. And then the stag that Viserys ended up killing kind of set his decision and said, okay, I think I'm okay for now, until after he, you know, drank. And one of my favorite lines was, the gods are punishing me for my indulgences. And I was like, I'm going to use that.
No, I agree with what you're saying, and I was sitting there wondering because obviously he makes the same decision in the books. He decides to uphold his promise to make Rhaenyra heir, even though he has sons. And fun fact, the note about Aegon the Conqueror's crown is so interesting because there's two separate crowns in this series. There's Aegon the Conqueror's crown, which his son does end up wearing, and then there's Jaehaerys' crown, which is the one Viserys wears, and it's the one that his daughter Rhaenyra is going to wear for her half of like the War for Succession. So his dream was right. I also found it interesting that the dream didn't say that his son was king; it just said he was wearing the crown, which would have been like a dead giveaway. But in the context of the show, is it's just a little more nuanced to kind of flesh out his character and dive into. Because afterwards, I was like, I was trying to figure out why he would have really kept making that decision even after all the drama of the hunt and all that was going on. And that's a really good point that, you know, I think the stag also kind of felt like Viserys to him because the stag was being pulled in all different directions. It definitely did not want to be there. It could had all this potential, but it couldn't, you know, make a decision and go anywhere because it was being pulled in all these different directions. So I think he was definitely sympathizing with the stag itself. He's like, I don't want to kill it. Also, that's not a hunt. There's no sport in that when that's there.
No.
That was I found it very sad. So, but there was more symbolism in the whole in the weekend that they spent, I guess, or the week or whatever time they spent out there on the hunt. So we see Viserys struggling to kill the stag because obviously it's tied up. It's a very sad situation. And then you see Rhaenyra and Kristen Cole face off against the boar, not unlike the one that got Robert Baratheon, in the first season of Game of Thrones, right? So, and we see how different they are approaching these things. So, what did you get out of that situation?
Yeah, so I found that really interesting because it was kind of the culmination of Rhaenyra's aggravation. Like, she took shit out on that boar. And I found it really interesting that Viserys was hesitant to kill the stag. That's the entire reason he went on this hunt. And then Rhaenyra is just chopping the shit out of this boar. But one of my favorite scenes was Rhaenyra walking back into the camp on horseback with the boar behind her, and she's just covered in blood, and literally everybody is like, okay.
That was such a good scene. Also, okay, so they introduced several very important people in this episode. So you've got the Lannister twins, who Jason Lannister. There's Tyland and Jason Lannister. Jason Lannister was giving me like early Jaime energy before Jaime stopped being so like prideful and like all about himself. He was giving me major Jaime energy, and I was like, "You kept the Lannister energy, sir. There you go." And then obviously his brother is much more reserved. He plays a very important part throughout the story. Tyland Lannister does. So, but Harwin is there. They introduced Harwin, and for people who haven't read the books, Harwin is going to be someone who's very important to Rhaenyra. So when you saw her walk past, and she's covered in blood, and he's just like, "Okay, girl," and she's like, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm a badass." And
Right.
so he just like watches her go past, and she just looks at him like, "Yeah, what about it?" It was so good. I was like, "This is a good setup for their relationship." I was here for it. I got really excited.
I really appreciated that Jason Lannister, the one that was trying to hit on her earlier, was kind of like, ugh. And then you saw Harwin like, yep, get it.
No, he's because Jason's like, okay, this is you look kind of scary right now, and Harwin's over there. What I don't know what he was doing because I thought about all sorts of jokes in my head because I think he was skinning a squirrel or something, and I was like, this is not romantic at all. But he's just like, that's a woman right there. So Harwin is going to be really important, and they definitely introduced him. The Lannister twins are important too, and you got to hear about Joanna Lannister, who is badass. So I'm just really excited for how all these new characters are going to be in because now we've met them officially. Now they're there, and now we kind of get to see how they're going to interact with the story moving forward. But yeah, like I also kind of thought it showed more of Rhaenyra's grit. So yeah, you had a point. Like she was taking all her frustration out on the board because I think she was like, I'm tired of people trying to take things from me. This board is trying to take my life. This person's trying to take my throne. These people are trying to take my hand in marriage. You can't take nothing from me. And so she just goes in. And then, like I said, it's a totally different situation with Viserys. Obviously, the animal is a different situation. The whole hunt is not even really a hunt. That was like, I was like, this isn't even fair. There's no point there. So, but it also shows that Viserys just does not have that grit about him whatsoever, and Rhaenyra absolutely does. And I thought that was a really good way to set up her character overall.
Yeah, I will say, tangent, I do hunt. I grew up hunting in West Virginia. And so to me, the way that they hunted that stag and then like they praised him and was like, yay, good job for killing the stag. It's like, well, it's kind of like bear hunting, which isn't really bear hunting. They just send the dogs to like tree it up a tree and then they shoot it out of the tree. I'm like, is that actually hunting? And then they have to like make him feel good about it because he's the king and he's like, yay, I did this thing and now I'm gonna feed this festival. And I'm like, is that hunting? I don't know.
That's kind of what I was thinking as well because I understand it's tradition and way back then it was definitely a tradition. But personally, I felt there was no sport in it. It was absolutely unfair. You had like what 20 people after the one deer. You had all sorts of dogs, and the first thing I thought of was the last time we saw hounds. It was Ramsay, and Ramsay was horrible. So, but yeah, so I was just like, it made me kind of sad, and I think it made Viserys sad too. I think he realized that there was no sport in it either. He's like, what is this pageantry that I have to put on? Like he knows he didn't do the hunt. He knows it wasn't his kill. He was just, the person who held the spear.
So I noticed an Easter egg out of that scene of King Viserys killing the stag. He is down a couple of digits on his hand. Did you notice his gloves?
I did, and it's that's a very important note. I'm so happy you brought that up because when I saw it, I was like, oh no. But yeah, so obviously everybody knows he gets injured on the Iron Throne, and in the show it looks like he's been injured a couple of times, but his health starts failing. And I think that he also did enjoy his wine in the books as well. So his health starts failing as he gets older, as Rhaenyra and Alicent get older. So I think we're going to kind of start to see that steady decline, especially since he was, what do they say, in his cups for so much of the for so much of the festival. So I do definitely think we're going to see a steady decline because his hand did not look like it was a clean amputation. It did not look like it was a healthy situation there. So, and it did not look like the maggots had worked properly. So I was like, ooh,
Oh,
yuck.
those maggots, man. Ugh. Apparently they didn't work.
Apparently not. Yeah. So now that we've covered the blood section, there was also a lot of fire in this episode. There was so much of it. We got to see the Stepstones, and we have two dragons to talk about this time. So let's go ahead and jump into our fire section and start getting this shit done.
Okay, so yeah, we got to see two dragons in action this episode, which is awesome. And you mentioned her name or her or his name was Seasmoke. So first of all, is Seasmoke a girl dragon or a guy dragon?
So there are actually some dragons in the Song of Ice and Fire universe. They can change at will, so they're not necessarily male or female. In fact, there's one page where I want to say it's Caraxes or Vagar, but there's a page where the dragon's pronouns are changing down the page, and I had to go back and reread it a couple times to make sure I wasn't mixing up because there were two dragons on the page at one time.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
so they can actually change at will, and obviously there's also the possibility that maybe they may not be able to be determined right off the bat. So maybe you might think it's a male dragon when really it's a female dragon, etc. So I don't think Seasmoke is ever actually said explicitly. I think they refer to Seasmoke by Seasmoke's name
Interesting.
throughout the lore and probably also throughout the show. But Seasmoke is like a, as you guys saw, is like a pale silver gray dragon. So they're really keeping track of like the descriptions and which dragon looks like what. And we know that Seasmoke is Rhaenyra Valerian's dragon. Rhaenyra is not Seasmoke's only rider throughout the whole story, but I think that Rhaenyra is Seasmoke's first rider. So it's so cool because I think I've said in a few previous episodes that Targaryens and Valerians who have Targaryen like direct blood, because Corlys and Rhaenys are married, and Rhaenys has direct Targaryen descendants. So they raise their kids with their dragon. So they'll put the dragon egg in the cradle, and then the dragon and the kid grow up alongside each other. By the time the kid's old enough to fight or fly, the dragon is too. So Rhaenyra actually gets to ride Seasmoke into battle, which is so cool. And it's like you said, I think earlier, it's cool to see some male dragon riders, right? So because we saw Jon, but we didn't like start out with Jon, right? Jon didn't start out knowing Jon could ride a dragon. He was like, "Please don't eat me," and all the jokes that arose from that one meme, etc.
Right.
So, but it was so cool, and I did not think we were going to see like a dragon torching Stepstone soldiers, and it also was not even Caraxes. It was not even Caraxes. It was Seasmoke that came in and saved the day, and I was like, all right, okay.
So one thing I really appreciated about that battle scene is, we're used to, like I mentioned earlier, we're used to Daenerys coming in and just like murdering everybody in the last two seasons of Game of Thrones, but that one specific scene when Seasmoke is killing all of the archers on the little cliffside, one thing I really appreciated was Rhaenyra didn't overdo it. Like, he didn't make Seasmoke breathe fire until there was like no cliff left. He just did it barely enough to kill the archers, and then that was it, and he went off and flew something else, or flew elsewhere. So the anger, I guess, that we're used to seeing Daenerys fly Drogon with isn't there, and then the battle savviness was there, and I kind of appreciate those little nuances that you can see the differences in the generations, I guess.
Agreed. And that actually reminds me of like a really good point. So everybody knows that, the Targaryens, their biggest chess piece is their dragons, right? Like that's their biggest card they can play. But historically they've always used them very, very wisely. Like when Aegon and his siblings came over, they had ground forces, like they fought mostly normal, and their dragons were their iron fist basically. So you bring up a really good point. He was using a lot of strategy when he had Seasmoke coming up across the archers, and he didn't torch everybody on the ground. There's like intervals, etc. So I think that they're using their dragons to thin them out, and the foot soldiers can handle it easier. Because there's some instances with the Field of Fire in earlier in Fire and Blood, which is where I think it's Aegon and Visenya are fighting, and they're basically kind of using their dragon fire as a tactical advantage, and not a I'm going to wipe everybody out thing. So I think
Yeah.
they're very careful with their dragons historically, because you lose your dragon, now you've lost your advantage. So they're very, very strategic and careful with how they use their dragons for the most part.
One of my favorite scenes in the battle was when Corlys and the foot soldiers are finally coming up to help Daemon, and there's all sorts of action going on, and the cinematography is phenomenal. But there was a zoom in on Corlys, and then behind him you see Seasmoke come in and just a blast of fire. But what I really appreciated about that scene, and something that I've appreciated about all the episodes, is the Game of Thrones as we know it, everybody just talks about the fierceness of the dragons and how many dragons there used to be, and now there's 3 and everyone's just terrified of them. But now it's just like dragons are a way of life. Like everybody's just used to them flying around. People who get into battles know potentially they're going to get burned by a dragon, and everybody's just kind of okay with it. Like we're just so used to the fear of all of these dragons due to the Game of Thrones original series. And now you have like Corlys is in there, and then Seasmoke comes in and just burns everybody right there. But it's just so nonchalant. It's just the way it is. Instead of them zooming in on the dragon and burning everybody and like making it a thing, it's just part of battles at this point in time. And I love that so much.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. Like, it looks like the crab feeder might have actually been burned at one point too. But you bring up a really good point that everybody. It looks like everybody goes into it kind of expecting it to happen. Like you might get speared, or you might get gutted, or beheaded. You also might get burnt by a dragon. So I think they kind of go into it knowing that. I think a little bit because you're right. We did see when Dany would bring her dragons, and everybody would just be like, "Oh my god, I can't go. I'm leaving. I'm going to defect. Fuck this. It's not worth it." But now everybody's like, yep, this might happen. It's very possible I'm going to get turned to smoke and ash on this battlefield, and I'm going anyways. So, and also, like, I imagine that when you are flying a dragon, you have to be super careful not to thin out your own soldiers. Like, you're going to have to be really careful not to torch your own men. Because you can see, like, the Valyrians are just forward charge. They don't even look back. And I think that you have to have so much trust in the dragon rider to not include you in the, like, inferno.
So one thing about like the cinematography we're talking about too, and I know we mentioned this, I think we mentioned it in episode 1, but the writers and the 4 showrunners of this show are the writers who wrote episodes from the original series like Hardhome, Battle of the Bastards, The Long Night, which is the Battle of Winterfell. Those episodes are so phenomenal, and I could pick out some similarities between the Battle of the Bastards and this sequence, this battle sequence. They were just so good.
Agreed, agreed. Yes. Because that's what some of my friends were saying too. They were like, all right, so Daemon had his solo charge kind of like Jon Snow did.
Yes.
And so they were they were debating who would win in a fight between Daemon and Jon Snow. So I think they're all of the opinion that Daemon might win. And I'm kind of siding with them because I think that he had more formal training, and Daemon is not above doing some dirty shit when he's fighting
That's
people.
the thing.
So
right. So
we'll just put it. Well, that'll be the debate for the comment section. Like, who do you think would win in a battle between Daemon and Jon Snow? Who would do it?
Yeah, I want to hear what everybody's opinion is. I'm not going to give mine until next episode, and
Okay.
then I want to see what the comments say.
Okay, sounds like a plan. I am interested to hear it because I was like, all right, there are some similarities happening right now. The characters could not be more different, but the cinematography was very just expert level. It was so good.
Correct. So we were talking about the War of the Stepstones last episode. We thought that was going to be kind of, episode 5 maybe. But so far we've been kind of wrong on the timeline jumps, and there have been a lot of large timeline jumps in the first 3 episodes. So what do you think of those jumps? Are they too drastic? Are they just right? What do you think about those?
I think they're actually really good. So there are some gaps in the story because Fire and Blood, it's like a fictional historical novel. Of historical history. So so there are some gaps in the story. Like, for instance, there's like a 5-year gap, I think, from when Daemon and Laena get married, and then when the next like big events happen. People are having kids in the interim, but like the next big thing doesn't happen until like 5 years down the road. So I think they're progressing it naturally. And I've also noticed they make like a strong point in the beginning of the episode to tell you how far it's been. Like, I think the previous one was like a 3-month, like a 6-month jump, like half a year. And then I think Viserys says, they've been fighting down there for 3 years. It can wait 3 more days. I was like, actually, it can't. It cannot wait. You are wrong. But so they make it a point to kind of let us know how long it's been since the last thing happened. So I think the timeline jumps are actually fairly natural. I think we're going to see a lot of them, especially once we get to the adult version of some of the characters.
Yeah, and I think they do it pretty organically when they're explaining the timeline jump. And so essentially with this episode, we're about 4.5 years after episode 1. So that's a big jump in like maturity levels and character development. And I think they do a pretty good job, like you mentioned, of just explaining where they are. So he's saying, oh, well, they've been fighting for 3 years, which is 3 years after the end of episode 2. And then obviously he now has a 2-year-old son, and Alicent is pregnant again. So it's been a minute.
Yeah. And you can kind of see that maturity reflected in Rhaenyra also. And she has just had it at this point with what's going on. She's pissed at Alicent. She's pissed at her father. She's pissed at this poor little kid who at this time has no idea what's going on. But he didn't stay a poor little kid for long, okay? He doesn't stay cute and innocent forever. So I think Rhaenyra is she's just pissed, and you can see it. You can see the progression with Daemon. You can see Viserys is even more conflicted than he has been. Alicent is much more mature. She's like, I'm a mom now. It doesn't have to be like this, even though it's going to get so much worse in the future. It's going to be like this for a while. So I think everybody is so much more mature. And I think Rhaenyra and Kristen Cole's relationship has also kind of grown over time. So, because he mentioned that, she named him to the Kingsguard and she wrote his name in the book. And I thought about Brienne and Jaime in that moment.
Yes.
Where Brienne wrote Jaime's name in the book. And I was like, oh, and he's like, all that I have, I owe to you. I don't think that's like a small thing. So their relationship is definitely kind of blooming and flourishing also. And that's something to kind of keep an eye on, the trajectory they're moving forward to. So I think I'm so excited for how these characters are going to develop, and for the ties that are going to grow stronger and the ties that are going to be broken in ridiculous ways.
I am here for Rhaenyra's pettiness. Let me tell you something. She is doing so well with the petty. And like when she went up to that lady Red Wine, she's like, well, what are you doing for the realm other than eating cake, ma'am? Like,
and then her dog eats her cake. And I was like, oh, God.
And Alicent's just like, fine.
Also, I like that little note where Alicent said something on Rhaenyra in Rhaenyra's favor, like on her behalf, and she's like, Rhaenyra is doing a good job. She's more suited to this than Daemon. Daemon made his choices, and she gives Rhaenyra a look like, I'm really trying to be nice to you right now. I'm really trying to help you out, make you look good. And Rhaenyra's like, save it, and walks off. So, but I know like the pettiness is so real. The pettiness in the wagon ride and at the thing, they're yelling match in front of everyone. I was like, can y'all take it outside the tent, please?
That's what Otto was like, sir. You are in front of people. People can hear you.
And I don't remember who raised their voice first, but I was like, y'all need to get it together, like save appearances. At least go like scream in the woods, like go to the woods and yell at each other. Go somewhere where no one knows it's y'all, right?
Right. That actually is a really good segue into my final question for you. So Daemon's victory in the Stepstones was pushed by Viserys offering his help, which is a little dramatic. But is he this angry and against Viserys in the books?
So I actually can't remember if it says that he beat the messenger who brought the notice of aid to the Stepstones, but there is a different situation where he beats the shit out of somebody who brought him a different message. I want to say it's one about in the books, him having to send Massaria away, but there is absolutely a situation regardless of what it was for. I forget the exact event at this time, but Daemon is known to kill the messenger. Basically, he's not the person you want to bring any sort of news to, actually, because clearly you have no idea how he's going to react, even if it's good news technically. Even though 10 ships kind of seemed small, in my opinion, it seemed like a small amount of ships to send. And like I said, I don't know how much 2,000 foot soldiers might change the tide of a battle at that time, but the 10 ships, I was like, really? They've been losing the war for 3 years and you're just going to send 10 ships? Why not just totally just destroy it? Like send 20 or something and just come in force and end it all, right? So, but he is definitely, I think there's a statement somewhere that says, every time the Targaryens are born, the gods flip a coin, and the world holds its breath to see where it was landing. And I think the statement about Daemon is that it hasn't landed yet. So the coin is still like up in the air flipping, and so he's more likely to do one thing than he is another, and then vice versa. And I think I've also read somewhere that he's one of Martin's favorite characters because he's such a morally great character, and he's as likely to be nice and save someone's life as he is to chop their head off in front of their loved one. So he's just he's very unpredictable, and he has his reasons and his means to do all the things that he's doing. And he can talk all his shit. He can back it up. He can basically handle himself in whatever situation he's in. But you're always asking yourself, like, is this really someone you want on your side? So, but I think he answered the question well enough by the end of the story. So I'm just so excited to see how like the internet's opinion of Daemon changes as the tide of the story goes on.
So, I do enjoy that Corlys and him are still seemingly buddies, even after 3 years of being in this war. And, Daemon has a dragon, and you would think that would ensure victory. But Corlys is still backing him up, and he's like, nah, listen, you're not gonna, stab him in the back. You're not gonna do a mutiny. Yes, we're tired. Yes, this needs to end, but he's gonna help us eventually.
Agreed. And that's another thing that I noticed about this, like the Song of Ice and Fire stories as a whole, is that dragons don't always make the difference. Like a lot of times they are put up against something that kind of prevents them from being able to do so. Like in this one, the Triarchy has caves they hide in. A dragon the size of Caraxes cannot go in a cave and smoke someone out. Like if once they're in the caves, it's done. You can't do anything about it. You just have to wait for them to come out, and it could be at night. You may not know. They may get the drop on you. So the dragons are like an iron fist or like a final card to play, but they're not always the complete turning point. And I also appreciate that Corlys is not intimidated in any way whatsoever by the fact that the Targaryens have dragons, because he's like, you legit cannot be without me. I am your naval fleet. I protect you at sea. I protect your ports. I am the reason you have trade. So I think that he is secure in his position, and he also, but he's not like pompous and pious and prideful about it. He's very realistic about it. He knows his position. He knows what it can do for him, and he knows what he can do for them, and what they and he knows that they have to respect him because of his position in the realm, and he can leverage that however he wants to. And so I just like that dynamic.
Yeah, you're so right. And I wanted to, I forgot to do this earlier, but for anybody who isn't sure what's going on with the War of the Stepstones and what the Triarchy are, is basically Dragonstone is a little island off of the coast by near-ish King's Landing. And then there's Driftmark, which is where Corlys Valerian's home is, which is an island that's closer to Westeros than Dragonstone. But basically, the Triarchy are all of the free cities from Essos, Lys, Mimir, I think. And then I don't remember the other one. I could look it up really quickly. But the three free cities from Essos, they came over and kicked all the pirates off of the Stepstones and conquered the Stepstones. And then they're raising tolls. And since Corlys Valerian is in charge of the naval fleet there, he can't afford the tolls anymore. So he wants to kick. And then now the crab feeder or Craig Strayar was killing people and feeding them to crabs, literally. So then Corlys wants to take care of that, and he also can't afford the tolls anymore. So that's why the War of the Stepstones happens.
Yeah, that was a fantastic rundown. Yeah, I think it's Lys, Tyrosh, and Mir. I think it's Mir
Yes,
because
Tyros and Mir. Yes, you're right.
yeah, so you're totally right, because the pirates, they're basically charging everybody to go through that, and it's really cracking down on trade. It's cracking down their ability to move freely throughout the narrow sea. So there was a reason that Corlys was trying to get Viserys to do something, and Viserys would not do anything. So he's like, "All right, Daemon, let's team up. Let's go. You got something to prove. I need to get this problem taken care of. Let me just like use your ambition and point it in the right direction."
Right, because if you think about it, it's basically like imports, and it's just going to be way too expensive, and Corlys can't afford it, which means the Crown's not going to be able to afford it, which means Westeros is then out of imports and exports and all of these issues that are political, that they are referencing in something that you wouldn't imagine to be political, but it's what creates battles.
Yeah, like I mean that's so much of how it happens. And I think Corlys is also trying to protect all of his investments, because like he said, he worked so hard to build up his seat at Driftmark and his position in the realm. Like there's a theory, not a theory, there's a rumor that there might be a possibility of a spinoff. It's somewhat possible at this time. They're still working on it, but there's a possible Corlys spinoff in the future, about his 9 voyages, because he went on so many adventurous voyages around the world. He brought back so many goods that were so rare and valuable that he basically built up his seat and his position. Like he's the reason that this naval fleet is so not impeccable, but so daunting, I think, and intimidating. He's the reason that Driftmark has always been important. House Valerian has always been important, but Corlys has made the name. So he's just like, I cannot let the Triarchy jeopardize everything he's worked to build. So I am happy that he and Daemon have like teamed up to take care of something that Viserys would not do anything about. And like even Rhaenyra was like, you need to do something about this. They are like, and the narrow sea, like the Stepstones, is not really that far from King's Landing. I have like this big wall tapestry my friend brought me over here that I look at when like I film. And just like, how far away is it, right? So it's far enough away, but not that far away. Like it's a threat to King's Landing. If they get the Stepstones, it's a base, and they can kind of go different directions. So it's a big danger, and that's why Corlys was definitely like, he was aiming to get Viserys to do something, but like you said, he got Daemon, and now they're down there taking care of it. And so since last week we thought we were gonna get, like a little bit of Stepstone action. We were gonna get more Alicent and Viserys and all this other stuff. And I was totally wrong. I have done some research this time, people. I refreshed my memory because I've read Fire and Blood, but I read it before the show came out. So I'm trying to like get all the moving pieces back together in my head. So we have cooked up our Dragon Dream section and we're gonna jump into it with the projected possible possible timeline right now. All right, so here are my guesses for the timeline. So I want y'all to know that I looked it up, okay? I cross-referenced all the dates and I made like a temporary projected timeline on my phone. So so we've got right now we're at the King of the Narrow Sea portion of the story, right? We've got Daemon, he's down there in the Stepstones, he's getting his wooden King of the Narrow Sea crown together. And in the story, he's going to bring it back to Viserys. And that's where you see Graham McTavish hold the sword out. Daemon approaches, and the drama I'm sure will absolutely ensue. So there's a few key things that happen after he established himself as King of the Narrow Sea and wins the victory, like we saw in this week's episode. So the next thing that happens is a very important thing. It's Viserys and Alicent's 5th anniversary. And this is where the factions start for the War for Succession. And so what happens is they throw this big tourney. I don't know if we'll see the tourney since we've already seen a tourney. They may just do something else. But actually, no, we saw a picture. We saw a teaser picture. And there's a possibility we may see a tourney. And Alicent wears a green dress, and Rhaenyra wears a red and black dress in the colors of House Targaryen. So as you know, there's been some tension. So some people are on Rhaenyra's side, some people are on Alicent's side, and this is where the factions really break off. And so they start calling one side the greens and one side the blacks after the dress colors that each lady was wearing. And so who is a supporter of Alicent and who is a supporter of Rhaenyra because of their different house colors, right? Or yeah, I think Hightower is green. I think that's their house color.
Yeah, I think so.
So that's probably something that we're going to see because we have seen Alicent in her green dress. The tension is brewing. So that's a big possibility for the next episode. And then after that, Rhaenyra and Laenor get married. So which we saw some teasers for in the trailer, like one of the original trailers. So, and I think it's going to backfire on Viserys in a big way that he told Rhaenyra to pick the person she wanted. I think while from a fatherly point of view, it was good advice. It's he wants his daughter to be happy. Rhaenyra is also a very rebellious person, and I think that it's going to cause more drama overall. The fact that he told her that, especially because eventually she does kind of marry to strengthen her succession. So I'm interested in seeing how they're going to play that off. So after the anniversary tourney and the establishment of the two different factions, Rhaenyra and Laenor get married. And they probably have a little dance where they're at the big feast and the Valerians walk in and Rhaenyra's looking at Daemon and Daemon's looking at Rhaenyra and everybody's dancing. And then after that, Daemon leaves the Narrow Sea, or he probably has left at that point, probably. And he actually marries Laena Velaryon. And they have like a whole relationship thing going on. And so Rhaenyra is with Laenor, Daemon is with Laena, and there's a big gap. Like I think there's like a 5-year gap, during which time I think Rhaenyra is having children. And the drama will be real, and the tea will be real, and the court rumors will be strong, pun intended, because there's a big gap between when Daemon and Laena get married, everybody starts having babies, and then some more big things start happening in 120 AC, which is like a 5-year interim. So that's the projected possible timeline. How they execute it, we have no idea.
So you think next episode we're going to get the more foundation of the rest of the series? Because so far they've established all the characters, but now they have to establish the storyline.
Yeah, I think there's a strong possibility because Aegon II is 2 in this one, and there was a 3-year jump. So I don't think it would be that implausible to see like another 3-year jump. So he'd be like 5 at that point, or like 4 or 5 maybe. So there's a strong possibility that we will see that anniversary and like the establishment of the factions. And there's another strong possibility that we might maybe get some wedding action. We're probably going to get something. Like I think it's about time now because now Laenor's older actor, has been introduced. So, and he's established himself as he's like a war hero now. He's keeping up the family name, basically. He's a good match politically for Rhaenyra. So there's a strong possibility we'll see that. And also, I know from the trailer, Daemon has short hair when he brings the his wooden crown to give to Viserys. He has short hair when like they throw him down on the floor at some point, and then he has short hair at the wedding feast. So there's a possibility that all those things happen in that same general interim of time. And I have a theory about what the finale is going to be, but I don't have enough information yet for it to be valid. So I'm still trying to like assimilate information and try and see if I'm right about it. But if they end it like on the note that I kind of hope / expect them to, it's going to be like the coolest, most give me season 2 possible ending ever. And I'm so excited. So I think we're probably going to see a shift, because like I said, there's that 5-year gap where where Rhaenyra is basically having kids, and we've seen some of her kids in the trailer, and we see, theoretically, I think we see Laena's funeral scene in one of the trailers also. Like, it looks like a funeral at high tide or on Driftmark. So I think that's when the characters will change. I think they're going to go from Daemon marrying Laena maybe, and then boom, big jump, older characters. Okay. That's my theory. Yeah.
Well, so far they haven't jumped times within an episode. So it's been one episode of a timeline, and then they jump for the next episode. So I kind of do appreciate that. I hope they maintain that process, because I enjoy that the episode that we're watching is all within the same time frame, and then the next one can be the time jump. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it's made it much easier to watch than like mid-episode time jumps that just kind of give you that like jarred feeling a little bit. You're just like hard stop, and then it goes on to something else. So yeah, I'm happy. Like, I am definitely enjoying how they're pacing this show. Like, they're giving you all the information you need. You know your characters, you know who's likely to do what, why everyone's upset with each other, and they're going to get into like the absolute grit of it later on. And so I cannot wait for what happens in episode 4. Also, I am loving these episode names, like the Heirs of the Dragon, the Rogue Prince, the second of his name. I was just like, right. This is really good.
And if you think about it, he's not technically Aegon the second of his name yet until he takes the actual throne. So right now he's just Prince Aegon. So the fact that they named it the second of his name is a little Easter egg in itself, because it's like, is he going to be the second of his name, or is he just going to be Prince Aegon?
And the Targaryens name each other after their predecessors very often. So the second and third, like keeping the numbers right, is going to be like really important to keeping the timeline and keeping all the, because there's so many Aegons, so keeping all the Aegons straight in your head. So I know. So I'm so excited to see what happens in next week's episode. I know Michelle is too. And we're going to be back every Tuesday on CouchSoup.com during season 1 to recap the latest episode of House of the Dragon. And next week is episode 4.
Yes, it's going to be so good. So make sure you hit that like button. That helps us out. Let us know in the comments what lore you'd like us to dive into next. Don't forget to comment about who you think would win in a battle between Jon Snow and Daemon Targaryen, because I really want to see that argument. It's a discussion. It's not an argument.
It's a polite discussion. We're definitely going to be comparing strategies, but it's a polite discussion.
For sure. And we will see you guys next week with all the fire and soup.